How you doing, everybody? Uh, is the sound okay and the video all right? I finally got my new computer, and so I'm getting used to a lot of stuff with this. so, hey, Junior and Joseph and offline, online, and Mr. Gumby, Joseph, how you doing? Okay, great. Oh, we are having one of those really almost perfect spring days. Hi, Forbin. Oh, great. Hi, Owen. Looking younger on the new camera. I, I take a pound of Vaseline and sort of give it the blur. Anyway, this morning we talked about uh, watch companies or watches, I guess, in general, that have seemed to have improved over the last 5 years. And I wanted to take a look at the opposite this afternoon. Some watches that have sort of been on the slide. Hey, Rancher, I left you some messages. I don't know if you got them or not. I've been trying out all of my new gizmos, and I maybe they're not working right. Anyway, so let me start off with a watch, I suppose, company that was that doesn't seem to be what it used to be. And this is Harry Winston. I really like Harry Winston, not because they themselves were, excuse me, great watchmakers, but what they did was that they had some of the best watchmakers in the world doing watches for them, either on a regular basis or having these special, I think they were either yearly or every other year, called the Opus series. And they were purchased, Harry Winston was purchased by Swatch for somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion, which, to be honest, sounded a little, like a bargain. They must have been in a lot of trouble. I mean, just the stock of Harry Winston and diamonds and other kinds of jewelry must have been very high. And well, as a watchmaker, they were, like I said, they were jewelers, and jewelers are very good at making the designs and so forth. And but they're not watchmakers, obviously. And two famous watchmakers for the period, I think it was in the 80s or 90s, even into 2000. They hired what was not Paul Viderek. I'm trying to think. Jean. It's not Jean Paul. It's Jean somebody else. Viderek. Um, Jean Marc Viderek, and Roger Dubuis. Both of them worked together for a period, and there were other kinds of people who went to work for him, who then became, if they weren't already, famous watchmakers. But ever since Swatch bought them, I talked to one of the guys at the New York boutique, Harry Winston boutique, and he said they they were going to use Blanc Pan movements from then on. there goes the, there goes the neighborhood. Um, and they said they were going to keep on with that opus. The very first opus, to give you an example, the very first opus that Harry Winston had was by F.P. Journe. And basically, what it was a resonance watch in essentially a Harry Winston design case. And every year they had these incredible things. One they had was by Jean-Marc Viderec. He actually did the whole watch for them, or at least the whole movement for them. And so since then, they sort of seem to have. They were never the kind of watch company that was going to be wildly popular as watchmakers. I mean, they weren't like F.P. Journe. They weren't like Cartier Lannen or Gerbel Force or Gronfeld or any of the ones that were well respected because they were so good at what they did. Or Marco Lang and some of the other German watchmakers. But they had great people doing stuff for them. And when, like I said, when Swatch took over, so that's one. I mean, there's the watches were so much fun and so interesting, and now they're not. At least not to me. They have some that they've toned down the three columns here, and I suppose they look like buck teeth or they look like three columns, but now they sort of modernized them and made them look less. So anyway, so that was one watch company that I thought, it's just not what it used to be. Another one, now maybe this is that the movements are good, but the watches just don't seem to be very interesting. This is Roger Dubuis. I mean, Roger Dubuis watches, I think every one of them has a Geneva seal. So they're very good watches as a horological phenomena, but their designs seem to be almost all skeletonized. And I don't know how you feel about skeletonized watches. I suppose that there's the open face watches, and you can see the movement, and there's a skeletonized is a version of that. But that's it. Just like they have all these watches that with these great movements. They're still using all of the movements from Roger Dubuis, but they don't seem to have any flair to them other than that Geneva seal. So I don't know. Those are a couple. I mean, I don't know where the high point of Roger Dubuis was. Perhaps at the same time they had these. They have watches like Easy Diver, which I thought was one of the most interesting sports watches around. They had Sympathies, especially the classic ones, and they had some other. I mean, really amazing watches, but there hasn't done any amazing things that I've seen lately. The one watch company that's sort of a funny thing, and I think this may be true with a lot of watch companies where the genius left, and this is Langenheim. Langenheim was all Lang, really. There wasn't much Heim to it, to tell you the truth. And so, because of economics and so forth, and sort of dealing with a purist like Marco Lang, and all of these beautiful watches and movements that he made. Now, since he left, the only thing that I've seen that's been any different than the entire stock that he had, which was really remarkable, they came out with a new one called the Hector or something like that. And it has a UWD 33.2. The 33.1 was totally designed by Marco Lang, and it was sort of a movement to be sold separately. And it had small seconds. And what the current management and watchmaker did was that they added a center second to it and called it 33.2. Okay, that's the only thing I've seen that's come out of there since Marco Lang left. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Marco Lang is going to do beyond his initial watches. So both in German and in Swiss watch companies. But any other that you've seen uh, that have been, what are your opinions? Like watch companies say, oh boy, I used to really want to have one of these watches, but not so much anymore. Let's see what you have to say. Oh boy, high conservative movement in Tuna and Rohit, Max Busser, Jean-Luc. Hi, Donald. Hi, Lord Hellespont. Did you start getting out of Geneva seals and start on goats? God, you're the guy on the Minotaur channel. Minotaur channel. Okay. Hey, Foreman, not enough. Oh boy. See what you started. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Lord Hellespont's the goat channel. That's a different one. Hey, Mark, how you doing, man? Hi, Mr. or Embry, JLC. Decision to go with ultra thin rather than broader range. Yeah, I think some companies have done that. They've cut back on a lot of models that weren't. I think JLC. I like them so much, so it's hard to say anything negative about them. But you're right. They got rid of the entire, what was it called, the geophysic line, and that was just, and I think you have decisions that they have to be made that are basically business decisions. Like Patek Philippe got rid of their entire Gondolo line. Rolex is down to one Cellini model, and of course they got rid of the Prince, which was to me one of the most innovative watches they are, and a lot of other people have done. So that's sort of a downer too. Man, what, what do you get? Panerai, not what it used to be. Rohit, I don't know if Panerai was ever all that. I'm sorry, and I've always liked the design of Panerai, but I've always, ever since the 318, I've never trusted them. So that's, but I never, I mean, other than designs, the other thing too, Panerai had that very few watch companies have done, and I wish they do more of that. And it's a totally useless function for most people, called the what is it called? The something of time. I'm always losing that equation of time. Panerai had an equation of time, and the other day I saw one by I think it was, who was it? I don't know, Arnold and Son, Breguet, some of the other ones. Andrew, Panerai has a lot of face and following. Oh, they do. Yeah, because you have a lot of fans doesn't mean necessarily it's sort of the best thing in the world. What was the last great Harry Winston? Boy, I don't know. That's a good question. I think it sort of was probably one of the Opus that they did, Forbin, before they got taken over by Swatch. I don't know why Swatch didn't. Swatch said they were going to go ahead with it, but never did. Max Busser was doing the thing with Harry Winston before MB&F, right? He was one of the, again, you're talking about a lot of talent. Panerai is purely design, was never known for their calibers. Tuna, yeah, it does sound like one. Okay. Hi, Coachy. AP getting rid of the Jules Audemars and Edward Piguet. I agree, Koji. That's a good point. I had one of the older Audemars Piguets. I got it because it had a moon phase, and it kept perfect time. It was really a well-made one, but there was something about it I just didn't. Probably it was very small for one thing, and I finally traded it in on on overseas. I think that's what I traded in on. Jeez. Okay, Girard-Perregaux had an equation of time model, didn't they? They may have. I don't know. That's another company that they seem to keep certain designs that are not very interesting and getting rid of some, like the Richville or whatever it's called. I think they need to really rethink their whole design line. This is what H. Moser did. They really came out with their heritage line, their streamliners and things like that I think are fantastic. Unfortunately, they don't lose their value, so they're expensive. Hi, Grommel. Tag Heuer has declined significantly. Tag Heuer was another one of those companies that they have some incredible designs. Their Monaco is one of my favorites, especially I guess it's called the Union Oil model. But Tag Heuer, I keep expecting Tag Heuer to do great things. And I'm thinking that again because Carol Forstier, Pasapi has taken over their design thing, and she's the one that came out with. She designed something like 30 new movements for Cartier, and have no idea why she left Cartier. There's always some story back there, and everybody says, "Oh, it was on very very nice thing." It never is. Okay, let's see. Ebel, the soft relaunch and new direction in 2014 has produced absolutely nothing. Yeah, something like that too. They weren't much, and then they weren't too much. There was one. What was it? There's some really good ones that sort of were in the background, and they've been much better than I ever thought until I started, paid a lot of attention to them. We're talking about them going the other way. Invicta made great watches back in the 40s and 50s. Yeah, they did. That's how come I mentioned for the last 5 years of things that, of course, the last 5 years, 2 of the last 5 years have been part of the pandemic, so it's sort of hard to say. Hi, Jose. What about micro brands like Trashka and Long Island Watch? I don't know. The whole notion of a micro brand is almost like a hobby brand, I think. I'm really wondering. Really am. Hey, Beauty of Scent. Cartier is nothing but a Giza. No, Cartier has come a long way, I think. They put some good, they really do have some excellent movements. But they're more like, Forrest Gump's box of chocolate. You never know what you're going to get for a movement with Cartier. Some of them are really excellent. El Lara, yeah, rancher. El Lara is one from 1900 until 1989. El Lara had the most complex watch ever made. Then in 1989, Patek Philippe made one, and then it was surpassed by one that was made in I think it came out in maybe 2016 or 15 by Vacheron Constantin. But they were bought by Festina. El Laurent was, and I thought, oh boy, Festina is going to put some money back in that and bring them back to where they should be, and they haven't. They've got some beautiful watches, though. I had one. I had one of their Osmiar, but I was always mad at it because they had some phony baloney name of a movement, and all it was an ETA 7001. It's not a bad movement, but the fact that they, it has little bitty movement in a great big 40 millimeter case. CFK is so much easier to remember. Yeah, Kasapi, that's it. You're right, CFK. Neither one of them is easy for me to remember. Instead of Secret Invicta fanboy. Speaking of Cartier, do you get to look up Mass Mystery? Isn't that an older one, Andrew, that came back again? I did take a look at it. I didn't spend a lot of time looking at it, but wasn't that an earlier? I think it was from Cartier, where they had, back a long time ago, had that, and then they brought it back again. Okay, let's see. Does it lose its focus by having too many? Some may do that, but I mean, if you look at the watches that Lang and Heim had when Lang left, they had a wonderful variety, not only of watches but of movements. They had, I think, about 8 or 9 calibers. Here's this little watch company making all of these incredible watches. And actually they still are, because basically they just plugged in, and I think they improved their marketing a little. The other, I'll tell you something. Now, this is a company that I mentioned something about this morning. This is Lange. Here again is a company I really liked their watches. But a friend of mine who's German, he's a German watchmaker and also a former Grand Prix judge. When they first came out, I think it was with like the Saxonia, and then the Saxonia, he said that is got to be the best buy in the world. Then a little later, he said, they've been going downhill because of the Richemont group. They're just interested in the business end of it. I don't know. I tell you, I wouldn't mind having a Lange, but I'd rather have a Lang and Heim and lots of other watches. So I don't know anything. Yeah, I know that's the mystery thing. They had those before. I think it was Cartier that had them, and it could have been some other watch company that did that. Hey, Owen, what's the lead time to turn a watch brand around, and where do they start? Sellers and watchmakers market at the moment would be expect changes ahead. Good question. I don't know. There are different kinds of people. Sometimes, if the bean counters take over, like happened with Cartier and Must de Cartier, they just started putting out junk that people could afford, but it was still junk. I don't know. That's a good question. I think if I sort of believe in something, you hire a certain watchmaker or a group of watchmakers, and they go in there with their hair on fire and come up with some really brilliant things. That's one of the problems is that we don't know who they are. I mean, where you have something, Carrie Vuitton or F.P. Journe or even Michel Parmigiani, Urbel and Force, the Groenfeld brothers. You know the people there, but you could have a brilliant watch come out of Patek Philippe, for example, stupid silicon air springs, and you really would know who was that, who did that. One of the unusual things was also Carol Forestier Casapi, that she was recognized. And I think the reason she was recognized, I don't think Cartier had a lot to do with it, but somebody did. And that was why what is it, 2012, that she was a watchmaker of the year. Well deserved, too, for all of these different things she did. But she is rare. And I think that, the people at Cartier were, I don't know, because I think most of the ones they sold, they could put quartz in their watches. They could put a hamster on an exercise wheel to run the things, and people going after Cartier could care less. But some of them do. I think people like us care, and like we don't count for much. Swatch owns ETA, right? Yeah. This is one of the things that's interesting about ETA, is that they have different levels, as you probably know. And I think their top level is a COSC, and one right below that is also, both of those levels of ETAs are very good movements. The only problem I've ever had with ETA isn't ETA, it's these watch companies that use ETAs and didn't tell anybody about it. Now the same thing's happening with Solida. Yeah, Universal Geneve and Eterna, you're right, Gromel. Those are good examples of ones that sort of went into a slide. The same thing with what is Vulcain. Vulcain I think they've had their own movement for quite a long time. Now, some of them don't have that movement, but Vulcain is sort of like, Mark Twain said about his death was exaggerated. And I think Vulcain's is too, is that they keep hanging in there somehow. But I don't know where they're going. Maybe somebody with a lot of dough wants a watch company with a name and go in and buy Vulcain and come out with some new president watches. For some reason, Seiko seems to insist on messing with what already works, changing the Alpinist, for example. Great example. I mean, I love the Alpinist. And you're right. They messed it up. You wonder what happens at some of these meetings, is that it's important, the financial end of it is no joke. I mean, I know that the Sandoz Family Foundation people there, were very upset with Parmigiani. Well, Parmigiani's a watchmaker. He's not a trendsetter or anything else. He makes really good movements and watches, and people didn't like the designs, and he's an artist, not a sales guy. I think the guy that they brought in from Bulgari is already, you can see his influence on the watches that Parmigiani Fleurier has. The Admiral's Cup. Okay, let's see where they're coming. Is the Admiral's Cup, is that by Quorum? Is that the one you're talking about, Tuna? If that's the one you're talking about, I agree. I like it too. They make the Kontiki. Interested to see what GP and Urban Jurgensen do under new ownership. Yeah, I think Urban Jurgensen was here. They had these fabulous watches, and they couldn't sell lifeboats on the Titanic. They just were like, whoa, here we got these great watches, so we don't need to advertise. I have no idea what was going on with that, but Kerry Voutilanen and his group, actually, it wasn't just him, his group. He's really a very savvy business person, which is unusual for somebody who's a creative. He and F.P. Journe and a few other of those guys are really very sharp business people, in addition to being really fantastic watchmakers. Eterna, the Eterna Kentucky from 1967, working as new. I think there was a brand that I reviewed recently. It may have been Eterna, and they had some of the coolest watches. I'll tell you another one that is sort of for up on a higher end is Arm & Strom. Those things, they got some very cool watches. Let's see. Eterna used to own ETA. Yeah, you go back in a lot of things. I tell you what, two watch companies, Omega and Tissot, used to be one, and they were sort of Tissot was more the bargain model, and Omega was the fancier model. And then, of course, once Omega went to the moon, so did its sales. Yeah, Yeah, it's quorum. Yeah, the Admiral. I'm with you. I like that a lot. What about Urban Jurgensen? I'm not sure whether they're getting better or going. Not Urban Jurgensen, but Ulysse Nardin. They seem to be going this way, and you never know what they're up to. They had that wonderful watch in the Regatta. Love that watch. And then they had another one, sort of a nautical watch that was, looked like they just threw a bunch of junk on top of it. And, it was very elaborate, and I don't think it went anywhere. Oh, okay, Koji, I get the message. All right, guys. Hey, Big Sal, I'm sorry you have to Anomino, love the pieces 10 to 15 years back. Hey, Anthony, how about Wimpy? Wimpy's they had some watches. I don't know. I think they sort of faded out of watchmaking, but I'm not sure. Whole Milk, I have no idea how Oaks and Junior are doing, but I hope they can survive. Yeah, that is. It's almost like it's one of those watches. I think real collectors should have at least one. Interesting kind of stuff in Oaks and Junior, and I said it all wrong, and I know that, so sorry about that. Okay. We'll see you guys. Have a good week, and I don't know, this last Watches and Wonders was sort of hoping to have another one. Take care.